Hello, welcome back. Today we have a topic. We're not going to tell you what the topic is right now, but throughout the podcast, you should be able to identify or know to a certain extent what we're discussing. Okay. As we live, work, play, sing, dance, and socialize in a place where there's many different cultures, many different ethnicities, backgrounds, and we would call this place would be called a melting pot. A melting pot. Whenever you have a melting pot, there tends to be a social learning, growth, understanding, development involved with the different languages, cultures, ethnics, so on and so forth. So when this occurs, there's always a dominant social norm, and it changes from time to time, but usually there's trends that are set and there's other things that come with this conglomerate of the melting pot. So with that being said, the question is, what is a culture vulture?
Exactly. What is a culture vulture?
So, I want you to tell me what you think it is based off of the name.
Hear culture vulture, you think of something that is like a bird is a vulture, but I think of something that is outside of something else. I think of a culture vulture as something that is external from that culture. So, I mean, it's appropriate for a culture to say things like, well, to me, a culture vulture is, someone who has taken my ways or my ideas and used it for their own, or just taking it period or whatever. So that's interesting to me right off the start to see them on the internet talk about their definition of what they think a culture vulture is. But to me, when I hear culture vulture, I think of and believe that I am defining it as something that is outside of a culture. So you have different cultures, and within each of those cultures, you have things in the way of their life and the way they do things in their daily lives that makes them who they are. And so when you get a bunch of different cultures around each other and they mix and mingle in this, what you call melting pot, it creates sort of an atmosphere of, somewhat of uncertainty, somewhat of unknown, somewhat of, what are all of us different people doing here? And then the stage is set for, well, who's gonna, set that trend, that next biggest thing, and then it goes from there. So what do you think culture vulture means to you?
Okay, according to Daily Rap Facts, a culture vulture is someone who steals from a culture and displays it as their own. And so when you look at this, you have a lot of people with that demeanor, right? So let's look at it. If you display this into the business world of creation, right? In this case, Mark Zuckerberg would be a culture vulture because he supposedly stole the idea of Facebook from the Winklevoss brothers. So, and let's just display this all the way around. It doesn't happen in just hip hop, but it happens on a larger scale. If you have a good idea, and it is being shown, then you're going to have someone, and especially the key is it's not popular at the moment. You're going to have someone looking to claim that as their own, or take something that you created and make it their own. By that definition, that is considered a culture vulture. Now, let's look at it in the bubble of hip hop. Hip hop naturally is popular, influential, and has been around for almost 40 years, if not 40 years. And during the growth and development of hip hop and the popularity that has spread it worldwide, you have a lot of people who kind of look up to the music when they're younger. And they hear songs, they hear music, they see videos, and they want to emulate and imitate. And this leaves people who are not necessarily in that environment, who are on the outside looking in, who this is new to them. They want to embrace that, but they may not know how to do it because there's no manual or instructional guide on how to fit in with something that you see and you like, but you just don't know how to do it. That's almost like saying, okay, I am poor. How do I get rich?
Or the reverse.
And you don't really have a roadmap or a guide in most cases with those who are considered the average person, and the small 1% is wealthy or rich, should I say. So it's similar. But what happens is in hip hop, you have the individual who sees this and do not know how to directly go inside of the bubble and and accept and be accepted. So they start becoming, or they end up doing creative things to, be accepted.
Exactly. I believe that those individuals are probably the ones that want to be that. They want to be that unique. And that's what the definition said.
Yes. And they come up with these creative ways, and what happens is, right, and they end up getting attention for it, and sometimes, most cases, doing well because of they took something and made it theirs. And to be honest with you, what would that be? Plagiarism of an art? But it's not necessarily if there's contribution. And that's where the issue comes in. The references are not there for where they got it from. And then when they start peeling back all of the layers of this particular person who embraced this art form that he has found a way to get attention for, all the other people say, hey, this is not yours. You need to give us credit for this art form that you're embracing and that you've gotten this attention and money for. And in this case, a culture vulture would be considered a plagiarizer. And that's what happens. So with that being said, when you look at that leads to the next thing, right? So there's many individuals who've been claimed to be a culture vulture. There's a whole list. I'm not going to go over that list, but if you're out there, you know who you are. What I tend to see is, for one, okay, if there is someone who comes into the hip hop community, it's because they were drawn in, and in fact they are excited about this transition. But you're gonna have those who are in the culture almost like a whole nother language. They are keeping their eyes out for these type of individuals to try to weed them out, right? And if they get through that, then obviously they'll been and had some encounterings that they would say, I guess you would call it a hazing. And then they'll be accepted. But to a certain extent, the main thing is I tend to look at it from a positive perspective of, wait, hold on. We've been doing this. When you look at it as a leader, from a leader perspective and a collective forward progress standpoint, development and growth, we have been doing this for so long that we have influenced people way outside beyond what we would normally do, or that we would normally be in contact with or communicate with, to where they want to be just like us. And with that type of influence, that should be a compliment. And it is a compliment until there is a reason probably why it turns into something else. For an example, maybe if the person who is considered the culture vulture is having an attitude and don't want to really, be around, and then they be like, wait, hold on. You're isolating yourself from the actual identity or the culture you embraced, meaning that is good enough to say you're cool and do all these moves and all this stuff that we're doing, but you're not around us. And in fact, you think you're better than us. Then I can see how they would want to, weed those type of individuals out. But that would be the case. And if someone is doing that, then that's definitely culture vulture, by the term of stealing something. What did it say? A culture vulture is someone who steals from a culture and displays it as their own. And I think that's what they're talking about.
When I think of some maybe real examples, because when we talk to the younger generation, they know all these names, and they're also on the watch for what is defined as a culture vulture. And a good example would be, rarely do, like you said, some get through that initiation sort of process. And so if you're talking hip hop, there are examples, and there are some that do, but they're few, and everybody else is definitely out. They're on the outside, they're external, and they originated externally, and they weren't never accepted because they didn't properly, sort of like properly crediting, right, the source of their creations that they're coming up with, or their ideas, and or there's another phrase for that offhand I'm not thinking of, but it's the same thing. So it would be those examples that would be not accepted. And so I don't know, singer like maybe Adele, a singer like Adele made it. Adele not only, properly credited her source by outwardly making statements, but I mean, I'm not trying to put names out there either, and I'm not trying to, put a focus on any one individual, but there is a difference between taking a whatever trend or idea even, and using that for their own, for whatever good purpose, and crediting where they're using it from, versus taking that and using it possibly for any old purpose, and also not crediting it from where they're getting it from. So that shows a total disrespect, obviously, of so I mean, overall it just wouldn't be acceptable to most individuals to have their ideas or something, that their way of life, it would to them and to anybody, it would be, because you're talking about internally versus externally. And so to anyone inside of that culture, that would be it would be yes, like taking something from them and mocking them on top of that. So that would be a complete abuse. Not just using, and there's a difference between using something and then abusing it. That's the difference. So when we're talking hip hop, so we're talking about a specific culture and it is global now. You're going to be having individuals within the culture that make up the whole. And I'm going to tell you from what I know that, every one of these people in hip hop are going to be on the watch for that, on the watch for culture vultures. And so that is why it's important for everyone to know, because, hip hop is global. And the main thing is just like you would play by the rules with anything else to win, ever more so in that, though, in the hip hop. So that would just be my little bit of knowledge on it. And I would have to say to win that, and not only do you have to play by the rules, but you gotta be best at it. And there are a few that are going to be best at it, even if they want to be best at it. So I guess that's the point of competition anyway, but that's what I think of when I think of culture vulture. A little bit of competition to be the best so that they can be a part of that culture or continue with that culture.
Yes. I'm going to give one more example before we wrap this up. But here, according to jackcentral.org, it says, if you ever seen a Caucasian person with dreads or an African American with Chinese tattoos, they have probably been labeled as a culture vulture by the communities that have made those specific things relevant. A culture vulture is a person who adopts someone or something from a different community and make it their own. So, with that being said, this is what is being defined as a culture vulture. And if this is what you're doing, this would be considered plagiarism. Plagiarizing a culture.
Oh, exactly. And plagiarism, if you don't know what that is a form of abuse. It's a form of abuse of intellectual property, right?
Yes. In this case, yes, a community.
A community of intellectual properties.
Okay, guys, that'll be all for today. Till next time. Thank y'all for listening in. Global News Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
See y'all. Bye-bye.